Welcome everybody to another week of the Owl Nest, covering another week of the Overwatch League. Oh, I guess Overwatch 2 League. That's what the thumbnails have been saying all season is Overwatch 2 League. Another week of matches, another week closer to the end of the season. We're almost there. 1 month. Yeah, 1 month exactly as of today. The grand finals are a month from today. Wow. Happening in person in Anaheim. I hope to see someone there. I'll be there. You won't be there.
All of our many listeners find Hiccup there.
Yeah, good luck.
Sign things and take pictures.
Yeah, I'll sign all the merch that
He's
we
doing
have.
meet and greets.
Yeah,
the whole time.
I'm gonna sign our merch. That's non-existent. It'll be non-existent signatures. Another week into the chaos that is this current meta. Although it's been so much fun to watch, I've enjoyed.
It has been
the funky stuff. But we're gonna jump right into not actually Overwatch League stuff. How about the most important thing that's happened in the last several months? Today's the day. Overwatch 2.
Evil Geniuses beat. Oh yeah, that.
Wrong game.
Overwatch 2's out. Woohoo!
It may be getting DDoSed as we speak, but it's out.
I spent more time in queue than I did in game, but it is out.
It is out, and it was fun. Even though I had to jump to the Asia servers to get any playtime, I still did it. I still played. We discovered some fun open queue comps.
Yeah, that we played a couple games with the two of us, and we were doing Junker Queen, Orisa, and then we had Kiriko. One game we had Batiste, and the other we had Lucio.
The one with Lucio, that Kiriko ult gets popped, and
and the first one, the one that we had with Batiste, we also had Hog.
We had a Hog as well.
Like, you have those three tanks with two healers, and one of them being Kiriko with her ult. It's insane. Also, Orisa with Kiriko's ult is like
with
so
commanding shout.
Fun.
It's
like
you go running into people with the spear. It was so much fun. And the short time that we got to play, it was fun. What are your immediate thoughts? What are some things that you walked out of our short gameplay sessions with?
I'm stoked. I think so. Of course, there's the disappointment with the way the servers are handling things. Like, how much of that is the DDoS attack versus other things? Who knows? But the way I see it is the gameplay itself is insanely fun right now.
Mm-hmm.
Battle Pass, it feels like you're progressing the whole time. Like, I think just in the little bit of time I had, I'm up to like level 5 already.
Man, I'm up to level 3, and I played a little less than you did.
Yeah, I did all the daily tasks like within an hour, pretty much, or something like that. So it's like it's really manageable. It's really fun to play. It's like it's what Overwatch always should be. Like, it just feels better. Like, I feel like the last several months, anytime I open up Overwatch and go to play Overwatch, there's the Overwatch I want to play, and then there's the Overwatch I actually do play, and it just doesn't feel good. You get 2 CP every map, and it just stun locked, and I don't know. It's just bad thing after bad thing, and this. It's the Overwatch I've always wanted to. It's like the idealized version of what Overwatch should be made real.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing in the few games that I did. It did take it. It's gonna take me a little while to get used to some of the new mechanics with heroes. The one specifically that we were talking about was how when you melee with D.Va, it doesn't stop the boosters. Now maybe that's just maybe there's just a toggle somewhere in settings that we're missing, but in Overwatch 1 there wasn't. It just stopped. So it'll take some getting used to that. The only thing that you and I both are not fans of is the between rounds round results. That screen's kind of ugly, and I hope it gets changed. It does not look good.
It's really stupid.
Because it's just half full color, none of that cool gradient looking stuff. The scoreboard as well.
My biggest issue with it is it doesn't match any of the normal Overwatch aesthetic.
It's just big and blocky.
It just doesn't match. Even if it was like slightly different colors, it might work better. I don't know. I just don't see the point of it. But I could see that changing in the future. And
Yeah,
if it doesn't, if that's our biggest complaint is that visually we don't like an
between
in between
rounds.
round screen, then I think that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, and then I'm personally wish the scoreboard was a little different. Maybe it's just because I'm not used to it, but I felt like it was a lot harder to track my team's ults because it's like it's in a different position than I'm used to. The ult indicator is just kind of like maybe that one just takes some getting used to. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I was gonna say I felt like it looked better, but
I do feel it's a little intrusive though, because it's just a big block in the middle of your screen. Even though I think it is slightly transparent. It is slightly opaque, I think.
yeah.
But like compared to what Overwatch 1 had, where there was no big bright colors, it was really just your team's roster and the ult percentage. It does, and all of your stats are at the bottom of the screen as opposed to just right in the middle. I think maybe they could work on it visually to not be as.
I know. I kind of liked it how it was. I
Yeah, I
do
did
get
too.
that complaint of yours, but I thought the added information
Oh, I like the
was
added
good to
information.
have.
I just wonder if there's another
And
way
I
they can
think
present it.
I think one of the big things is with it having a lot more information and stuff, you don't want to check it. Like you aren't checking it mid round as much. You're probably looking, you know,
Well,
elsewhere to
I'm
see.
checking it more for ult tracking of my teammates. It's harder for me
Yeah.
to find it, but maybe it's just I need to get used to it. But all in all, other than the fact that the servers are being are being run on a toaster that's being DDoSed from Narnia, it was all good. Hopefully, it just gets back to fixing because I don't want to play comp until the servers are back up and running. So, but I with only the limited game time I had, all the stuff. The account merging was a bit odd. I know that you don't have that because you didn't play extensively on any other platforms, but I played extensively on Xbox and the stats merged, but the Xbox profile stats are not accessible on their own. You either get them when it's all merged in with the PC ones or you just get your PC stats. It's kind of weird, but all the skins, all the tokens, I like basically doubled the amount of coins that I had. I gained all of the Overwatch League skins that I had on Xbox and PC. They both just merged, and any extra Overwatch League tokens I had on Xbox also were brought in. So everything was merged like it should be, which is nice. So the only thing left to try is how competitive works, which I've seen some things on Twitter. It may be a bit funky, but who knows? We'll have to see. But we finally have the game that the pros are playing, and with the short experience we have with Kiriko, I'm excited to watch the pros play with her.
I am so stoked. Like there were a couple times throughout the week that like I think the players that will do best with her are players that are like cracked on Zen
Mm-hmm.
because like her normal attack is pretty similar to Zenyatta's when it comes to like just the way it flies and the way it feels and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but some of those players are just going to be nuts on her, and I'm excited to see it. She's such a high skill ceiling character, and I feel um, like one thing when I saw her kit, I was afraid she would be too hard for like newer players or too hard to pick up
Mm-hmm.
for the average player. But honestly, I played some of her, and I always felt like I was getting value. Oh, excuse me. Even if I wasn't hitting her headshots and stuff like that, like you get value through your healing and through your
Mm-hmm.
um through everything else in her kit, her mobility.
Yeah. I definitely will need some getting used to playing because I mean the one or two games that I played with her, I was not didn't feel like I was getting a whole lot of value. Um, but the thing I will say is I forgot how busted Junker Queen was.
Which I think is interesting because I was just like right before we started recording, I had pulled open Flat's tier list for launch day.
Mm-hmm.
He has Junker Queen F tier.
Well, maybe it's just because we're lower
Like
skill players than
way
he
lower
is.
than anyone else. And I think that's what it comes down to. But she's honestly like
She was so much. I mean,
pretty good. Like,
I primarily played her in our open queue games when we were doing it. She just, especially when we were playing against a Reinhardt, she just kind of rolled a Rein comp
yeah,
because you
and it
just
felt
run
like
at it.
yeah, and it felt like she like most of the play that I had with her was either against a mirror match or against Reinhardt, I think, as well.
Mhm.
And she feels really good in those situations, um, especially if you're smart about how you use your abilities,
Mhm.
and if you're hitting her knives and stuff. But I feel like she's a lot like Ryan, where it's a lot of positioning.
Yeah.
um, and she has kind of a similar, or at least when I was playing her fairly similar to Reinhardt in the way I was positioning
So was I.
and using cooldowns and stuff, and she kind of has um that same sort of feel.
She was fun to
She's a
play.
lot of fun. A
I
lot
still
of fun.
suck with Sojourn, but I think I
Yeah,
will
I
always
haven't
suck with
touched her.
Sojourn.
Every time I got DPS, I was like, I always let the other person choose first, and every single time they chose Sojourn,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh yeah, she's
I
new.
can't hit the
Like,
railguns to save my life.
and I feel like I've seen so much pro play of Sojourn. I know how
Yeah,
she's supposed to look, and I know how she's supposed to get value, and I can't do
I
that.
can't I can't do that. So I will
And
probably
neither
not
can
be
any of the
playing.
teammates that I get.
I will
So
probably not be playing a whole lot of Sojourn, but Junker Queen, I feel like I'm getting a pretty good hang of her. Kiriko will take a little bit getting used to, but overall, I'm happy as long as the servers get back to a good spot. I'm looking forward to playing it a whole bunch for the next
yeah.
many
How do you
years to
feel
come.
about the DPS passive?
I honestly didn't play in a whole. I mean, I was mainly playing. Like, I played Reaper a few games, and I feel like it helped a lot with Reaper because you were
Mhm.
actually able to chase down targets and take them down, and it made Death Blossom especially feel a whole lot better. But I feel like for hit scan, like you're not going to notice it for hit scan because you're not going to be close range. So
Yeah.
the best heroes that are the heroes that are going to be able to take the most advantage are going to be like Reaper, Mei, um, Torbjorn at close range. It's going to be like those
I will
close range
say,
heroes.
interestingly enough, the character that I most noticed it on when I was playing DPS was actually Ashe. And the reason why I noticed it so much is because I was looking down my sight,
Yeah.
and like any difference in speed
It
when
would
you're
just
looking
boom,
down your
boom,
sight,
boom.
you can feel it. And it was like, oh my
I
gosh,
mean,
like that passive is there.
you'd probably
Like,
really notice it playing Widow as well if you're scoped
yeah,
in.
yeah. And so,
But
but it didn't feel like insane, and it didn't feel bad to play other roles into
no.
DPS, and that was kind of the concern that a lot of people had, was
Well, I
that,
think the biggest concern is what it's going to do in pro play when players are
yeah,
actually like
and
really good. Like if you give a Genji, if you give proper 30% extra movement speed and faster reload speed on Genji, that's where I'm worried a little bit. But for your average player, I don't think it's really going to matter. The
yeah,
situations where it would become a problem would be situations where you were already losing the fight, and it just makes it easier for them to win and clean up. So, all in all, I'm happy with the thing with what I've seen, and I'm ready for the future. But enough about Overwatch 2. Let's talk about the league. Let's talk about the pro players that have been playing on Overwatch 2 for months now. So I want to start. We talked about them last week, but this week they finally got a win. The Shock took down the Rain, but got rolled a bit by the Toronto Defiant. And on top of that, they also decided, Striker just decided, I'm going to rejoin the Shock again.
naturally, as he
Naturally,
does.
as Striker does, retires. He's retired what? 3 times, 2 or 3 times now.
I think so, something like that.
In their game against Toronto, it didn't make a whole lot of sense what they were doing with him. They brought him in. They brought in the Tracer specialist to play Sombra, and then they subbed him out. It was weird what they did against the Defiant. It was not really working too well, and they just kind of got rolled. Toronto just beat them. But then they went over and played the Rain, and that was a slightly different story. I mean, it went back and forth, but even then they were doing weird things with Striker. Like they had Sam come in to play Sombra instead, and then I couldn't figure out what they were wanting to do with Striker.
Yeah, and I think they didn't know what they were trying to do with the Striker at all.
It
That
was
being
just a
said, they did
mess.
win the match, which is good, because like we've said before, like the Shock don't necessarily need wins right now. They
No,
need to, so it's like
they need to
they can
figure out how
they
to play.
yeah, and they have the time to kind of slowly figure things out. And so like as long as they look better this week than last week and stuff, which they did, I think they're in good position. And I think they have time to try to figure out, like, okay, we have Striker now. Where does he fit into the roster? When do we play Striker, and who do we put him in over, and stuff like that. And so I think it's totally fine for them to be looking just mediocre right now, because I think they are experimenting and they're willing to do things that they normally wouldn't do
Yeah, and
because they're going
ultimately
to lose.
in the rain game, they just decided to go with the square peg approach and just force Sigma, which, like, I mean, I guess if it works, it works. I don't imagine that they'll be able to beat like gladiators with Sigma comps, but comfort picks. I mean, at the end of the day, when they were in map 5 against the rain, everybody just went on comfort picks. Everybody was just playing what they were proper. I'm pretty sure they were running like Sigma Genji Trace. They were just playing comfort picks and ended up winning off of it. And at the end of the day, if you're struggling playing the meta, just play your comfort picks. It worked for London.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about the balance of the game right now is, like, obviously there's always going to be some comps that are better than others. But the nice thing right now is, like, the difference isn't big enough that you're just totally screwed if you don't play the meta, like it was last tournament cycle with the Junker Queen. It's like, with the Junker Queen, it was like you play Junker Queen or you're at a huge disadvantage every time you do anything because it was just too strong.
But yeah, this time
now things are in a pretty good spot.
Because yeah, the shock we're forcing this Sigma Tracer Sojourn comp, at which Proper is a menace on Sojourn.
Oh yeah, Proper's kind of nuts.
Like, as soon as they swapped to this kind of setup, that was when they were able to reverse sweep, is when they just went Tracer Sojourn, and then Kaluge was playing Diva Sigma. It was just, they were like, screw it, we're not going to worry about meta, we're just going to play what we want. And it worked for them. They were able to pull out the reverse sweep. Now, granted, I mean, they play this next week, looking at the schedule, coming up, they play nobody. They don't play this week. I believe they play this. I know they still play Spitfire and as well as Paris. So Paris, they could do just about anything they want, and Spitfire isn't a team that I think they're too worried about.
No, and I think them, even if they lose to the Spitfire, it's not a big deal.
No, it's not a big deal. I think their win this week over the Rain, who aren't a pushover team. Like, the Rain are a good team. So winning against the Rain definitely looks good. However, they did lose to the definition of mediocrity in the Toronto Defiant. I have never seen a team go so, like, where the universe is so hell-bent on making sure that they are perfectly mid. The Toronto Defiant come out and 3-1 the Shock, and then turn around and get 3-1 by the Vancouver Titans. Oh,
good job, universe.
Defiant are sitting at a perfect 11-11 with a 0 map differential. It doesn't get any more perfectly mid than that.
I would love if they went the rest of the year just keeping the perfect 50. Like, end of season with a perfect 0 map differential,
even map win-loss
rate. Like, if they do that, that's just props to them, because it's impressive to be that middle of the pack.
To be that mid, yeah. I mean, they have the Mayhem and they have the Outlaws. Those are their next 2 games, which are honestly very easy for them to go 1-1. They beat Mayhem 3-1, lose to Outlaws 3-1, and then they're back in the middle. So Defiant are weird. I don't understand what their problem is.
Yeah.
I mean, the Titans are crazy. Aspire was like rolling kids. So it's like, this is not like this.
A lot of it comes down to that, because it's not the same Vancouver that,
didn't win a game
at the beginning of the season or whatever. Like, they're looking a lot better this whole stage.
But it was a different Defiant than that played the Shock. I think they were
That's true.
They're contractually obligated to be 50-50 to be at 500. Pure, honest 500 Overwatch. Pure, honest. However, with this loss, that does put Defiant in an awkward spot moving forward, which we'll talk about a little later for playoff and play-in qualification. But like a loss, it's hard to it's hard to get a scale of this team who, when you beat the Shock and then lose to the Titans, you're like, okay, well, what does that mean for the Shock? What does that mean for the Defiant? But I mean, the Outlaws, I guess, technically did it as well. But at least with the Outlaws, you could easily point to they were playing differently. Dante wasn't playing. Yeah. Whereas the Defiant, they were playing the same roster both times. They just didn't look as good the second time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
You do you, Defiant. I want, at this point, might as well. Just finish it out. Be dead even. Just middle of the pack. Be the definition of a gatekeeper team. And then lose to teams lower than you and beat teams higher than you. As opposed to the other way around, which is what a gatekeeper team is supposed to do.
Yeah, just keep up the good work, Toronto.
Keep up the good work, Defiant.
At least they're keeping it interesting.
At least they're keeping it up. Even though they may be dead even, at least they're making fun, good games, keeping good, honest 500 Overwatch.
Well, and it's interesting because, like, they must have a wonderful sense of humor because it's like, who
does that?
Destroys the Shock and then gets destroyed by Vancouver. Like, it's just, man, that the league's not pre-written because, like, people would just not believe it because this is just garbage.
It's too good. Especially because they go and full hold the Titans on a map.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just...
They win the one map they win, it's a full hold, and then they go right back to losing.
Well, they had to prove, like, hey, look, we are the better team, but we have to keep the 50%.
Well, yeah, you got to keep it all balanced. We have to take the map.
Look, this is who we are. We're a good team, but...
We are a good, honest, even team. And there's nothing that the universe can do about it. In fact, the universe is pushing them to do it. So at least they're winning games, though, unlike a pink team from the East.
I have no idea who you're talking about. Can't be the best Hangzhou team in the league.
So
it's also the only Hangzhou team in the
Hangzhou are since their run in the midseason madness. Do you know what Spark's record is in their last 10 games?
What is it? I don't want to know.
They are 1-9.
Good
Their
job.
only win came at the end of Summer Showdown against the Valiant. That is their only win since Midseason Madness.
And I'm pretty sure we talked about them after Midseason Madness is like going forward, like a potentially like dangerous team for APAC. And like, yeah, they sure screwed that up.
I mean, they went to 5 against Dragons and Valiant, but with how Dragons have been looking, that shouldn't, like...
Yeah.
It's like, and then the Valiant are the Valiant, and it's like, if Spark weren't in the position they were with their league points and stuff, they'd be in trouble. But they're not, because I think they're far enough ahead that they cannot fall out of... We'll look at it later. Spark are just... Because Shy is having to play Sombra, it just feels like this team doesn't... And then, obviously, I, for the life of me, couldn't tell you why Neko and Tero are playing. I just can't.
I have no idea. It's painful to watch, and, it's
Chengun,
like
what are you doing with this team? Stop it.
They're looking worse, like, consistently worse than Valiant are right now, and Valiant lost their coach.
Like Spark are looking... The only team that I would say is looking more tragic than the Spark is Paris. But Paris didn't make, top 5 in in an international tournament.
Yeah, and Paris is NA, so like the West is expected to not do as well. Like it's esports.
I don't know. I would say that probably 9 or 10 of the NA teams would beat this Spark team.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, the only team that I would not give reasonable chance to beat them would be Paris.
Paris wouldn't. Vancouver probably.
I mean, Vancouver just beat Toronto.
Yeah, but...
It would be a competitive game. I wouldn't say the Spark have it easy. It wouldn't be an easy win. And it's like if New York plays good, then New York could. It's like this Spark team is tragic. Tragic. And even though they'll make it to playoffs or at least play-ins, I mean, if they go into play-ins and they make it out of play-ins, then everyone else would have just had to beef. Especially because this is going to be the meta that the play-ins are done under.
Yeah.
If
Which is
Spark want to
really
have any hope
dangerous.
of doing anything in the postseason, they need to figure themselves out and not have a 10% win rate.
And so far, it's not looking like anything's going to change. I mean, they did go to map 5 both of the matches.
I mean,
But-
looking forward, let's see. Their schedule next week, their last 2 games? Let me see. Yeah, so because this week is the last week for APAC. They play the Dynasty and the Charge.
Yeah, and I was going
Add
to say
2
if
more
they
losses.
if they were going to win any matches this tournament cycle, it would have been these.
It would have been
two.
these 2.
The tragic Shanghai right now and the
The
Valiant.
Valiant.
But they lost both of them, and so I think they've kind of
They're boomed.
sealed their they shouldn't get any wins this split, and I don't think they'll win anything in play-ins either.
No, unless they find a way to reinvent the wheel with this team comp, they're a mess. So, whatever, Spark, you do you, I suppose. But the team that was on the other side of their beatdown, the Valiant, hello, Valiant, are breathing. There's hope in the air for the LA Valiant. With their win over the Chengdu Hunters, the team that we had touted as the second best team in APAC last week.
Yeah, and we were talking about how going forward, they look like a really powerful team, the Chengdu Hunters, but they just got stomped by Valiant. I mean, not stomped.
Not stomped. It was close. It was a close game.
But it shouldn't have been close.
Valiant should not have won this. Like coming into the match, this looked like it should have been a 3-0, 3-1. But instead, it went to map 5, and Becky, especially, having the last several games, Becky has been looking incredible on almost anything he touches.
Yeah. And yeah, it felt like Chengdu was playing a little less organized than they had been. Like some of their ult usage was kind of questionable. And it didn't seem like they were all playing the same game the whole time.
Well, that's Chengdu.
Yeah.
Welcome to Chengdu.
But like last week they were looking so solid, but
maybe Valiant are just better than we gave them credit for. I mean, we talked about them last week, but I mean, last week they beat Charge and lost to Dynasty. But now
they play next week?
Now they play the Dragons and they play the Charge are their next 2 games. Honestly winnable. I mean, if you take down the Chengdu Hunters, those are winnable games.
Yeah, I think if they can win both of those, I think it really shows that they are a lot better than we gave them credit for. If they don't win both of those, I mean,
there's like nothing. It's like if they don't win both of them, you're like, oh well, good try.
Yeah.
If they do win both of them,
it kind of gets you thinking, like, is this
a real team
in APAC? Like
there's only 7 teams.
Yeah, but still.
Because I mean, Valiant. If the Countdown Cup was a tournament cycle, the Valiant are 3-1.
Yeah.
Their only loss coming to arguably one of the best or second best team in the world, which everybody is losing to the Dynasty. So don't feel bad, Valiant. Everybody is getting rolled. In fact, you played better against the Dynasty than the Dragons did. So take some courage in that. Make yourself feel good. But with Valiant's win over the Hunters and everything that's happening, when we go over and we look, let's take some time and look at the playoff play-in picture. And we'll start with APAC. Valiant is only a single point behind the Charge. And they play each other this week. If Valiant can win one more game than the Charge, Valiant will take the 6th play-in spot. And the Charge will be on the outside looking in.
Dang.
Who would have
Kinda
thought
nuts.
that coming into the final week of APAC games, that the Valiant still have a chance to make it into play-ins?
And the interesting thing, even if you look now, they have a better map differential than
Mm-hmm.
Guangzhou. Like,
Guangzhou just made Summer Showdown.
yeah. So
So Charge this week, other than the Valiant, play the Spark. And then Valiant play the Dragons in the Charge. So if the Valiant want to make it in, they need to beat the Charge, and then either beat the Dragons or hope that the Spark beat the Charge. I don't imagine
Which
that Charge
I
would let
don't
themselves
think-
lose
yeah.
to Spark, so Valiant need to beat the Dragons.
which Dragons over the last couple weeks
Have not looked great. And
They look
also
beatable.
they needed 5 to beat the Spark. I mean, so did the Valiant, but the Valiant beat the Hunters, who beat the Dragons. So it's like, because I genuinely think if Valiant are able to make play-ins, they will have already beaten in this meta every other team that they would face in play-ins. Because currently they would play the Spark and the Hunters, who they literally just beat this week.
Yeah.
So if Valiant are able to sneak in there somehow, which would probably come through them going 2-0 this week, I think.
I feel like a lot of times when we get to these end of season, like, oh, if this thing and this thing happens, like most of the time it's like those aren't very realistic.
This is
But
very
it's
realistic.
like,
This is
it's
winnable.
yeah, it's definitely doable, and it's kind of nuts how doable it is that, you know, the bottom team for most of the season might make not just play-ins but potentially playoffs. You know,
I mean, imagine if Valiant are able to go to Anaheim after the season that they've had.
oh yeah.
I mean, I would be sad not to see Charge there, but to see Valiant show up in the playoffs, we could have a battle.
Charge are boring.
We
It
could
would
have a
be way
battle
cooler.
for LA in person for the first time since 2019. Even though Valiant is only LA by name. I feel like Valiant could definitely make a splash if they made it.
Yeah.
Maybe not against like high-end teams. Like they're not going to touch like the top
especially
NA
once
teams.
Kiriko hits and stuff. I don't know that they'll be able to
But
adjust as well as
it would
some
be
other
fun to
teams.
see them there, because if there was a team that would pull out some wacky stuff out of APAC, it'd be the Valiant.
Yeah.
But then we go up and look at the NA side of things, and this is where things get a little weird. So it isn't marked, but Fuel are basically the number 1 seed. With how Shock is looking, Fuel play. Looking at the schedule, they play the Outlaws next week, and they also play the Atlanta Reign. So they've got 2 matches left against the Reign and the Outlaws. At the worst case, they go 1-1. Worst case, probably more like 2-0 though, right? But even if, let's say, worst case scenario, they only win 1, they're at 26 points. Nobody can beat it. Nobody can catch them.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shock could tie the points, but they would have less regular season wins. So Fuel basically have the number 1 seed in. Ooh. Okay, well, they don't have the number 1 seed internationally locked down because the Dynasty are also sitting at 24 points. And Dynasty have 2 winnable games as well. So if Fuel want to stay ahead of the Dynasty, then they need to win out. Because if they only win 1 and then Dynasty wins out, I think Dynasty would jump that. They would tie in points and wins. And Dynasty have a better map differential.
Yeah.
So Dallas needs to win out, I think, but maybe they hold a head-to-head somewhere. I don't know. Dallas, in NA at least, Dallas have the number 1 seed locked up. Shock are in trouble of losing the 2 seed to the Gladiators. Because as we said, Shock play Paris and London. And more than likely, they probably go 2-0 there, right? Like, probably. Because if they win at least 1 game, Gladiators can't. Gladiators can tie their point total, but they'd have less regular season wins.
Yeah.
Wait. Yeah. So Shock just need to not lose out. If Shock lose out, then Gladiators could jump them with a win or 2. But the top 3 are basically solidified, it's whatever. But then the Houston Outlaws, because the Toronto Defiant lost to the Titans, Outlaws are guaranteed end of season playoffs. Because the worst that'll happen is they could fall to 6, because Toronto cannot beat their point total. They can only tie it.
Good job, Houston.
For the first time
It's been a while.
For the first time in franchise history, the Houston Outlaws are going to playoffs. For the first time in 5 seasons, my team is finally getting to play in the postseason.
Which is weird because I feel like Houston is never a bad team.
Well, they were in season 2 and season 3.
Houston is usually not a bad team. Like,
usually what happens is they get boomed out in play-ins.
Yeah.
That's what happened the last several seasons, last 2 seasons, but this time they just avoid it.
They won't have that problem.
Now, granted, I think because maybe the website is right, but Outlaws play Paris this week. Like, the Outlaws are guaranteeing a play-in spot, and they're not going to fall out. Spitfire, Reign, and Defiant, though, are in a 3-legged race for the last 2 spots. Justice is not able to make it in. Florida, I guess, has an outside shot because Florida still has 4 matches to play and are at 12 points. So if Spitfire, Reign, and Defiant all just like flame out and Mayhem wins out, then I guess they could technically jump into the 5th spot. Unlikely because they play the Defiant, they play the Outlaws, they play Atlanta. They've got a hard remaining schedule. So I don't imagine that the Mayhem do, but they play the Titans, so they have at least 1 win in there. So they could jump the Justice, but I don't really see them. They're not going to jump into that spot because I don't see Spitfire flaming out because Spitfire still play New York. Although New York did play close to Gladiators, so I guess it depends on which New York shows up.
I think with play style and stuff, I think London still has the upper hand in that matchup.
You would hope. One would hope. Because if Spitfire or Reign boom out and Toronto wins out, because Defiant only play Mayhem and Outlaws, and if Outlaws beat Paris, their spot is guaranteed. And Defiant and Outlaws, if I remember correctly, are the very last game of the regular season. So there could be a world in which Defiant and Outlaws are playing, and the result of that match could determine whether Reign or Spitfire are in playoffs versus Defiant. And if the Outlaws are guaranteed, the Outlaws may do some tomfoolery to try and rig the standings. And if there was anyone to do that, it'd be Jake. Jake could be like, this Atlanta Reign team, let's put them in the play-ins. Or look at the Spitfire and be like, let's put Spitfire in the play-ins and like lose to the Defiant on purpose. Or put Dojin. I mean, it would. What would more than likely is they would put Dojin for that match.
Yeah.
And could potentially just have them lose depending on how Defiant play. So this week's London doesn't play either. So London is kind of just sitting and waiting to see how Atlanta plays because Defiant. Wow, there are a lot. Defiant doesn't play this week either.
Man, who plays this week?
London is sitting there looking to see how the Reign perform because the Reign are playing the Fuel and the Reign are playing Mayhem. So Spitfire are hoping that the Reign lose one of those games so that Reign only jump up to 16 points to finish their season. Because then Spitfire just needs to win against New York next week, and they're good. But if Reign goes 2-0, Spitfire would have to beat Shock. Would have to beat Shock in order to hold on to the 5th seed. And if they only win 1 game and go to 16, I think they're still safe from Defiant.
Yeah, because they have the higher.
They've got the higher win percentage and the map. They've got the better map differential. So essentially, what Spitfire needs to
at this point, Spitfire doesn't have the higher.
Yeah, they do. They're at +7. Defiant are at 0.
Oh, Defiant. Sorry, I was.
Yeah, no. Reign. Odds are Reign will probably jump the. Well, no, because if they stay tied, Spitfire have the point.
They have map.
They have the match win percentage over them.
Yeah.
So what it'll come down to is what Spitfire needs to do is not lose to New York next week, because if they go 0-2 and Defiant goes 2-0, well, Spitfire are in the play-ins, and I don't want to be in the play-ins.
Yeah.
Not against these teams. So this week is kind of weird, though, but like a large number of the NA teams are not. It's weird.
It's a bye week for a lot.
Yeah. It is kind of just, it is what it is. Anyways, enough of that. Enough of speculation. It's just more important for APAC because it is the final week for APAC. But now it is time for Power rankings. Here we go. Things are weird now.
Yeah.
Let's start with APAC because there's less teams. So, what do we? The only team that we really have to look at is what do we do about this Valiant team, who just beat the Hunters but needed 5 to beat the Spark.
I think they go.
Do they move, or does Hunters just move down?
I think Valiant go up a little bit at least.
Like above Shanghai?
Wait, where did we have them?
Valiant are in third from the bottom. They're behind. They're only above Spark and Fusion. It's like, do we think that this Valiant team is better than Shanghai? I don't. I think that their match against Shanghai is winnable, but I wouldn't say that they're favored to win it.
Do we think Valiant are better than Charge though?
I think it's in the same case as the Dragons. I'd say their match against when they face the Charge this week, it's winnable, but I think the Charge are the better team. I almost say what this does is moves Hunters down and doesn't really move the Valiant. So I would. Do we think Hunters are still above Dragons?
Yeah, I wouldn't move them too far down.
So just flip them in Charge, basically.
Yeah, let's do that for now, and I think we're.
And let's see, looking at the Fusion beat the Dragons, and then the Fusion lost to the Charge in 5. So you could make an argument to throw the Fusion above Shanghai and Valiant, but Fusion just lost to Valiant last week, but they 3-1 to the Dragons.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to move Fusion above Valiant, because I think Valiant is looking better right now.
Okay.
And with Fusion, I feel like they just aren't
consistent.
Yeah, it's like their highs are higher than Valiant, but their lows are way lower.
Mm-hmm. Do we add a all in favor of adding another tier break between Dynasty and everyone else? Dynasty 3-1 to the Hunters and 3-0 the Charge this week.
Yep. Extra tier break.
Another tier break. It is absurd how far ahead of everyone else the Dynasty are. It's like not even close. It is crazy how much better they are than everyone else. And like, let's see. I want to see the Countdown Cup standings. What is? Come on, I've got the app pulled up. I'm just wanting to see what the Dynasty's map differential. All right, Countdown Cup qualifiers. The Dynasty have lost one map. It was the map against the Hunters. The Dynasty are at a plus 11 out of 12 possible maps.
Dang.
I mean, the Dynasty are looking for just like perfect runs here. I'd say going into playoffs, Dynasty are the favorite to come out of APAC because the rest of APAC can't figure themselves out down here. So I like that. Dynasty, 2 tier breaks, Charge, Hunters, Dragons, Valiant, Fusion, Spark. Although this week, with Valiant playing Dragons and Charge, will help figure things out a little bit. Moving over to NA, though, there's a bit of a mess to deal with, isn't there? Because Gladiators went to 5 against New York, of all teams. And it wasn't like it was a reverse sweep situation. No, they straight up just traded maps. New York took map 1. Do Gladiators belong in the top tier, second to only Fuel? After that?
I think they move at least beneath the tier break.
So Dallas are in a tier of their own, or do you think anyone joins them up there?
I don't think anyone joins them up there. I think the other teams lack the consistency that the Fuel have. I think Outlaws are looking really good right now, and there's a chance, but I feel like putting Houston up there is just jinxing them.
True. Okay, so Gladiators below or above Outlaws?
I think Glad's dropped below Outlaws right now, actually.
Really?
I think so.
I think my concern with the Outlaws, even as an Outlaws fan, is that they play Diva Doomfist. Now, granted, they play Paris on Friday, and that would be the perfect time to test a Dante Zarya.
I don't think they will, though.
I think they need to, though, because they're not going to beat Fuel with a Doomfist or a Diva.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think they need to to widen the hero pool a little bit and at least add the Zarya to their hero pool so that when they're playing against a Zarya comp, they don't just get eaten alive on D.Va. But they looked.
Is Zarya the only thing you can play into Zarya?
Well, I'm talking about you could play. I think some teams have tried playing. No, Junker Queen was what was played against Reinhardt, which the Outlaws could play. So it's like the Outlaws. I guess you could play Winston if you wanted to try it, and I get you could make the D.Va work. You just have to dive heavily. The Outlaws have some flexibility issues because they can't play any of the main tanks, as far as I'm aware. Maybe they've been practicing it with Dante. I don't know. But at least in terms of how they looked against the Shock, I think second best under a tier break, though, is definitely worth it. Shock above the Rain, though, because they literally just beat them.
Yeah.
Spitfire got manhandled this week, but it was against Glads and Fuel, so I don't know how much you can write into that.
Like, it wasn't really,
I don't think Spitfire moved at all.
London's always been the kind of team that, like, when they lose hard, they lose really hard because, like, their play style.
When they lose, it's a team that's figured out their play style.
Yeah, but I still think.
I don't think they move.
Better than the teams under them.
I think they stay in the tier break below the Outlaws, Glads, Shock, and Rain, but they stay above Defiant, Justice, Uprising.
And I think Defiant, Justice, Uprising are probably still in that same order.
Uprising didn't play this week. Justice got manhandled by the Rain and then beat New York. And then Defiant beat Shock and then made themselves look silly against the Titans. So I could see an argument to move the Justice above the Defiant.
Yeah,
arguably. And then Boston, because they didn't play, it's hard to say. This next week they have a decent. This next week they literally play the Justice next week, as well as the Gladiators. So I think the Justice game is a big proving ground for the Uprising. And then Mayhem, I think, stay where they are. I think you could make an argument to put New York above Mayhem after their performance against Glads. And then I think you could make an argument. I think we could move Titans into New York and Mayhem's tier after their performance, if not even above Mayhem.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I would put Titans above Mayhem just because, like, I mean, them beating Toronto shows life, and I think...
And Mayhem didn't play this week.
And I don't think Mayhem has shown anything, at all this tournament cycle.
No, the only problem that they have is that someone can't decide what tank to play.
Yeah.
He's taking his hyperflex is becoming a problem. So this week could mix some things up. I mean, Spitfire don't play. Who else doesn't play next to it? I mean, there's a lot. Let me see. Looking through this.
Mayhem doesn't play.
No, Mayhem plays this
Mayhem
week.
does play. Mayhem
so the teams that don't play, Shock doesn't play. London doesn't play. Defiant don't play. There's a lot of NA teams that don't play. I mean, Titans play against Florida. Atlanta plays is okay. So it's just like Spitfire and Shock don't play, and I don't think New York plays either. No, they don't. But it's not like New York matters currently.
Hey, New York matters in here. I'm just kidding.
Oh man. So we currently have we have 5 tiers in NA. So we have the lone top, Dallas Fuel, and then a tier break, and then Outlaws, Glad, Shock, Rain, in that order. A tier break, Spitfire, Justice, Defiant, Uprising, tier break, New York, Vancouver, Florida, tier break, and Paris is always going to be in the basement. Nice. I'm pretty confident about these rankings as well. For once, I think these are decent. These are decent rankings. Props to us for making decent rankings.
We're so good.
Are we ready to predict some games though, and not be good anymore?
Do it.
How about we pred some APAC games?
Oh man.
These are good ones though. Final week of the APAC qualifiers. So these games, well, actually, looking at the ones that are on the docket, only one of them actually matters for standings. And this is probably the most important game to determine. This is the second game on Friday. First game on Friday is Spark Dynasty, so it's literally best team in APAC versus worst team in APAC. Yeah, that shouldn't be entertaining. But this next one, Guangzhou Charge, LA Valiant. This one will determine whether or not Valiant have anything to play for against the Dragons.
V for Valiant.
I am also V for Valiant. I believe.
V for victorious.
So looking at the schedule for next week, because the match order actually matters. So Valiant and Charge play Friday. So Valiant will know what their stakes are, because then Saturday, the first game Saturday, is Spark Charge. So Valiant will be going into their Dragons match knowing what they need to do. If they beat the Charge and then Charge lose to Spark, it doesn't matter what the Valiant do. The Valiant could lose to Dragons and they'd still make it in. But if they lose to Charge, but then Charge loses to Spark, if Valiant can beat the Dragons, I don't think they make it in. So in other words, if they beat Charge, they'll know whether or not they need to beat the Dragons on, what is that, Saturday? Yeah. Match order there matters.
Mm-hmm.
So we're both on board. We're both hoping. I want to see the Valiant in the play-ins. I want to see them make it. I love the Charge, but the Valiant are a more fun team.
Oh, yeah.
Next up, important for... Not even for seeding. This match holds no value other than it'll give us a good idea of who's better in this tier. So the Uprising and the Justice play this coming week.
Man, that's a tricky one.
I'm confident in the Uprising. I think the Uprising have been looking better, and I think Punk might possibly just diff Kalios.
Yeah, and I think that's, a very big possibility, but I think...
But Decay could also just diff the entire Boston Uprising.
Well, and I was going to say, Justice tend to look really bad sometimes, but I think overall they tend to be better than the Uprising. And I think if the Justice are having at least an okay day, I think they win. I think if they're having a bad day, they lose. But I think they're... If they play average, like if they play just straight up, I
honest
think,
Overwatch.
Yeah, just honest, Defiant,
honest 500 Overwatch. They'll take down the Uprising.
Yeah, no, I think they have the advantage, especially with Decay. I think Decay, like you said, has the ability to just 1v9, and I think
should be a good match.
I think either way it should be good or really bad.
Or really bad. You're true. If the Justice don't show up. Because the thing with the Uprising is, as long as Punk is, the Uprising play good. They don't, as long as Punk and Crimzo are playing, Uprising don't, fall apart. So I think the quality of this match will be whether or not Justice shows up. Not if the Uprising are guaranteed to show up.
Yeah, the Uprising, no matter what, we know what we're going to see.
All right,
but
so
I think
there we go.
Justice. But yeah.
All right, so we're split on that one. Justice for you, Uprising for me. Next up on the APAC side of things, Chengdu Hunters, Shanghai Dragons.
Hate this.
Yeah, I do too. I think the Hunters should be able to take it, right?
Yeah, that was actually what I was going to guess too. I think the Hunters, I think Dragons have been the better team for a long time, but I think this is the meta for Hunters. I think, if there's a meta to predict the Hunters to win against a good team like this, it's the Dragons, and this also happens to be a terrible meta for the Dragons. So if the Dragons can beat the Hunters here, it just shows that the Hunters
are a mess.
Can't ever win against
can't ever win a match that matters.
Yeah, because this is their time to win, and so I think it should be a Hunters win.
Should be a Hunters win,
but it could be a Hunters loss. But either way, it'll be a Hunters.
Yeah, they face off on Sunday. They're on the final day of APAC, so Hunters play Sunday. Hopefully, it'll be good. Next one. This is look, it's the Hunters again. Hunters versus Fusion. Two inconsistent teams. Who comes out on top? Let me look at the standings. Are the Fusion playing for anything? Technically, yes, but not really, because the Spark are probably not going to do anything. So Fusion essentially have the number 3 seed locked up just out of nature of the Spark sucking. So Fusion... Although Fusion do play Dynasty, so it's if Spark wins No, Spark are 2 points down. So Fusion don't have. This isn't a must-win situation for them, so they're not super motivated. Well, obviously, they're motivated to win, but it's not like a do-or-die situation for them. Nor is it for Hunters.
Yeah, but I'm going with Hunters on this one.
I am too.
For the same reason that I'm with them over Dragons, and I think if they lose one of these games, they'll probably lose both of them.
That's honestly, you're probably right.
But I'm gonna.
I'm with you.
Hopium.
I'm on it for the Hunters. Here we go. All right, and the final game, what should theoretically be the banger match of the week, played on LAN once again.
Call a 3-0 a banger, then
hopefully it's a banger for the sake of the audience that paid money to go and see this match live. Although the Outlaws weren't very favorable the last time this happened. Battle for Texas version 2 of 2022. This time being played in Arlington in the Classic Arena at the Fuel
time, Fuel 3-0ing the Outlaws.
I think you're probably right. Maybe the Outlaws squeezed out like a control map, doing something funny. But I think Hanbin's just a warlord. And as good as Dante is, he's not Hanbin.
Yeah, I think this season the Fuel have shown when they're able to play the meta they want to play, they dominate. And they like right now with the Zarya, Hanbin is just cracked, and the rest of the team's looking just as good.
Although I will be honest that outside, like you look at the tank matchup and like, okay, Hanbin clearly diffs Dante, but I'm gonna be honest, you look at the rest of the team and I don't think it's as clear. Like, I think this game will come down to the fact that Hanbin's just a god, not because the Fuel. Because when you look at the teams as a whole, the Outlaws actually have better players as a whole than the Fuel. Because I think Lastro Creative, because they're double flex, is better than Fielder Chio, because Chio's not a Zen player.
Well, that being said, the Fuel have the advantage of all sharing a brain.
Exactly. As a team, they're better. As a team, they're better.
So that's the thing, is I think. And as individual players, they aren't like bad. They can hold their own. But the fact that it's like they have all the best things about all the other teams. They have cracked individual play, but with the with better teamwork than anyone else. Like it's crazy to see. And I think as long as this remains the meta, no one's going to be able to get even close to them.
Yeah, I would like to see it be close. The only way the Outlaws win is if the map pool that's played goes slightly their way, and then Pelican and Merit have like a god tier game. Or Jake
though is like a lot of the maps in rotation right now
work for the Zarya comp.
I
mean, that's why APAC plays so much of it.
Or anything like that. And so it's like, I think no matter how the map picks turn out, I don't think there's a situation where Outlaws get more than like 1 or 2 maps.
No, if the Outlaws win this, it'll be because they've figured out how to play a Zarya comp, and Dante doesn't beat Hanbin, but like holds his own just enough for Pelican and Merit to do something, or for Lastro and Creative to do something. Because I will say that the one thing that Fuel don't have is like a top tier Zen player, because Chio is not a Zen player. So if the Outlaws are somehow able to abuse the fact that they can use Discord way better than Fuel can, if Fuel even try to play double flex, Outlaws could try to and like catch Hanbin out with Discords and hacks and just focus him down. Because if Hanbin's dead, I think then the Outlaws suddenly have fights they can win. So I think it's Operation Kill Hanbin.
Yeah.
But the Outlaws don't need to win this game to guaranteed playoffs because they play Paris. So it'll give them some momentum and some confidence coming into Dallas, at least. A 3-0 over the wimpy Paris Eternal.
Yeah.
Good job, Outlaws. You beat the cripple. So
haven't won it yet. I could see. I think it would be hilarious if Outlaws lost to Paris and then beat Fuel.
That would be the most Outlaws thing. And if they lost to Paris, it'll be because they put Doge in. I could genuinely see them putting Doge in to play this match
I think Doge will play at least one map during the
But
Paris game.
if it were
I
up
think
to
they
if
should
I
let
were
him.
Jake or Junkbook, I would be having Dante play Zarya in this Paris match on Friday. Like
Yeah.
straight up, I
I
would be
don't think-
using it. I would be using it as a can we play a Zarya comp with Dante? Because if you can't, well then Dante just goes Diva and then you just roll the Paris Eternal. You know? You at least have that. You're like, oh, Zarya comp's not working. Okay, fine. We'll just go murder the back line. Anyways, final week of APAC games. We have 2 weeks left of NA games. Some teams are not playing this week. Some teams are not playing next week. But we're approaching the final countdown coming in.
Yeah.
But honestly, Overwatch League is just something between us and Overwatch 2. So the unfortunate truth that someone had to say it. So
Yep.
enjoy the games this week, but more importantly, enjoy Overwatch 2 when the servers are not being DDoSed. Enjoy
now
the game of the future.
Now to go sit in queue for.
Time for us to go and
hour.
sit in queue.
Actually, okay, I'll be completely honest. This entire time that
You've
we've
been in queue?
recording, I have had Overwatch 2 open
No.
waiting in queue.
Oh,
and
you've
it's
been
still
in
not
queue.
working.
You've been in queue this entire time?
Yep. Still retrying.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. Well, then we'll get back to Q Simulator 2022. Maybe the rest of you will get to Q Simulator 2022. But with that being said, we'll catch you all next week. Take care.
Bye.